This show is part of OnePlace, a daily network of focused briefings across the stories people follow most.
Welcome to today's roundup. We are tracking a high-stakes deadline in the Middle East and significant political moves both at home and abroad. Let's get into the details of these developing stories.
Trump sets a final deadline for Iran strikes.
The president threatens total destruction in one night.
Civilian infrastructure is now a primary military target.
Trump promises to decimate every bridge in Iran.
Iran rejects the latest U.S. ceasefire proposal.
JD Vance travels to Hungary to support Orban.
Experts warn of a humanitarian catastrophe in Iran.
Steve Bannon's contempt conviction faces likely dismissal.
First, the Iran deadline.
President Trump has set a very specific and chilling deadline for Iran as the 5-week conflict reaches a boiling point. By 8 p.m. Washington time on Tuesday, the president expects a deal that meets his demands, specifically regarding the free flow of oil through the Strait of Hormuz. If no agreement is reached, he has warned that the next round of strikes will be devastating, targeting every bridge and power plant in the nation. Trump has already extended this deadline several times over the last few weeks, which has led some to question his credibility. However, the rhetoric this time is far more explicit and aggressive. He insists that Iran is already militarily defeated and is only relying on the psychology of deterrence through mines and drones. The tension is palpable as the final hours tick down.
The situation is complicated by the fact that Iran has shown very little interest in meeting these ultimatums. They have rejected a temporary ceasefire and countered with what U.S. officials call maximalist demands. This puts Trump in a difficult spot, because backing down now, after such detailed threats, could be seen as a sign of weakness on the global stage. Interestingly, Trump spent a good portion of his recent news conference praising the tactical skill of the U.S. military, specifically highlighting a recent mission to rescue 2 downed airmen. He seems to be using these successes to project a position of absolute strength even as the Iranian side remains defiant. The world is watching to see if this is another bluff or if we are truly on the precipice of a massive escalation that could reshape the region's infrastructure entirely.
Next, the one-night threat.
The president's rhetoric reached a new peak when he claimed the U.S. could take out the entire country of Iran in just one night. He specifically mentioned that by Wednesday morning, Iran could be sent back to the Stone Ages if they don't comply with the demand to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Trump appeared alongside the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the defense secretary to emphasize that this isn't just talk. He described a scenario where bridges and power plants would simply cease to exist within a 4-hour window of precision bombing. Despite the harsh warnings, Trump also claimed he believes there are reasonable leaders in Iran negotiating in good faith. It is a classic good cop, bad cop routine, but the stakes involve the energy security of the entire world and the lives of millions of Iranian civilians.
Negotiations are currently hindered by a massive communications blackout in Iran, making it nearly impossible to get quick responses from Tehran. A regional official noted that it takes at least a day to get any message through, which makes meeting a tight deadline even more unlikely. While countries like Pakistan, Turkey, and Egypt are trying to mediate, the lack of a ceasefire is a major roadblock. Iran wants a permanent end to the conflict and the lifting of sanctions before they agree to anything regarding the Strait of Hormuz. Trump, however, seems focused on the immediate reopening of the shipping lanes. He has framed the potential destruction as a choice for the Iranian leadership. If they don't choose the deal, he says, they choose the total demolition of their nation's modern capabilities, starting with their power grid and transportation networks.
Now, the infrastructure focus.
During a rambling news conference that lasted over an hour, President Trump doubled down on his focus on civilian infrastructure. He was asked directly about regime change, but he evaded the question, instead insisting that he has the best plan of all but won't reveal the details yet. What he was willing to share was the graphic nature of the planned strikes. He spoke about every bridge in Iran being decimated and every power plant being put out of business, describing a scene of burning and exploding facilities that would never be used again. This shift toward targeting the basic foundations of civilian life marks a significant change in the war's trajectory. While the briefing included top intelligence and defense officials, only Trump took questions, leaving many of the strategic details of this best plan shrouded in mystery and high-level threats.
The news conference also took some strange detours, with the president complaining about NATO and even joking about running for president of Venezuela once he learned Spanish. However, the core message remained the Tuesday night deadline. He emphasized that the complete demolition of Iran's infrastructure could happen over a period of just 4 hours if he gives the order. This timeline is incredibly aggressive and suggests that the U.S. has already pre-positioned assets for a massive, simultaneous strike. By focusing so heavily on bridges and power, the administration is signaling that they are no longer just targeting military sites or nuclear facilities. They are looking to paralyze the entire country. This approach has raised serious questions about the long-term goals of the war and whether the U.S. is prepared for the humanitarian fallout that would inevitably follow such a strike.
Moving to the bombing threats.
As the war enters its 6th week, President Trump's timeline for a U.S. withdrawal has become increasingly muddied. Initially, he suggested a 6-week conflict, but now he is talking about the possibility of the U.S. getting involved in rebuilding Iran after the strikes. This is the first time he has mentioned a post-war reconstruction effort, though he provided no specifics on how that would work or who would pay for it. His messaging on the Strait of Hormuz has also been inconsistent. At various points, he has demanded Iran open it, told allies it is their responsibility, and even suggested that the U.S. should charge tolls for ships passing through. This mix of threats and commercial ideas has left many analysts confused about the ultimate objective. Is it about regional stability, energy prices, or a new form of American revenue?
The president was also asked if he was concerned that striking civilian bridges and power plants would constitute a war crime. His response was a simple no, followed by the hope that he wouldn't have to do it. He seems to believe that the Iranian public is willing to endure this level of destruction if it eventually leads to their freedom. This is a high-stakes gamble on the psychology of a population already under immense pressure. Trump reiterated that the period until 8 p.m. Tuesday is critical. He claims there is an active and willing participant on the other side of the negotiations, but the public evidence suggests a wide gap between the two nations. With the deadline looming, the threat of complete demolition remains the primary lever the White House is pulling to force a deal that is acceptable to the president.
Next, the ceasefire rejection.
Iran state media has officially confirmed that they have rejected the U.S. proposal for a temporary 45-day ceasefire. Instead, Tehran is pushing for a permanent end to the war and the immediate lifting of sanctions. They have conveyed these terms through mediators in Pakistan, making it clear that a temporary pause is not enough to get them to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. President Trump acknowledged the proposal, calling it a significant step but ultimately not good enough. This creates a diplomatic stalemate where both sides are looking for very different outcomes. While regional players like Egypt and Turkey are working hard to find a middle ground, the gap between a temporary truce and a permanent peace treaty seems too wide to bridge before the Tuesday deadline. The Iranian leadership is framing the U.S. threats as a plan to commit atrocities.
Legal experts are pointing out that attacking infrastructure that doesn't contribute to military action is a violation of international law. Despite this, the administration is moving forward with its plans. European leaders are also getting involved, with the president of the European Council urging Iran to stop its attacks on regional neighbors. There is a flurry of diplomatic phone calls happening behind the scenes between Qatar, Iran, and other Gulf states. But the public rhetoric remains incredibly hostile. Iran's foreign minister has been active in these discussions, yet the internal pressure within Iran is growing as the threat of a total blackout looms. The rejection of the ceasefire suggests that Iran is betting that Trump will not follow through on his most extreme threats, or that they are prepared to retaliate in a way that makes the cost too high for the U.S.
Now, Vance, in Hungary.
Vice President JD Vance is heading to Budapest to support Prime Minister Viktor Orbán in what is being called his toughest election in 40 years. Orbán has been a staunch ally of the Trump administration, and this visit is a clear signal of the importance the U.S. places on that relationship. Vance is set to speak at a massive rally in a football stadium, reinforcing Trump's previous message of complete and total support for the Hungarian leader. Orbán is currently facing a strong challenge from Peter Magyar, a former insider who has gained significant traction in the polls. This election is a critical test for the right-wing populist movement in Europe. If Orbán loses, it would be a major blow to the network of international allies that Trump has cultivated over the years, especially since Orbán was the first EU leader to back him.
The relationship between Trump and Orbán has also had practical implications for energy policy. Orbán recently secured an exemption from U.S. sanctions on Russian oil, a deal Trump described as a personal agreement between the two men. This implies that if Orbán is ousted, Hungary might lose that special status. Hungary remains one of the few EU countries still heavily reliant on Russian fossil fuels, defying calls from Brussels to diversify. Interestingly, While the U.S. supports Orbán politically, there has been little diplomatic help regarding Hungary's recent pipeline issues with Ukraine. To avoid fuel shortages, Hungary has had to tap into its reserves and look for alternative routes through Croatia. Vance's visit is intended to project strength and unity, but the underlying economic and energy challenges facing Hungary provide a complex backdrop to this high-profile political endorsement.
Next, the humanitarian warning.
Experts are warning that the threat to obliterate Iran's power grid is essentially a death sentence for millions of civilians. The electrical grid is the foundation for water treatment, hospitals, and food refrigeration. Without it, modern society collapses almost instantly. In arid regions like Iran, desalination plants are the only source of drinking water for many, and those plants require massive amounts of electricity to function. A sustained grid collapse would lead to a total societal breakdown within weeks, as backup generators run out of fuel and waterborne diseases begin to spread. This isn't just a military confrontation. It's a direct hit on the life support systems of an entire nation. The humanitarian fallout would likely spill over into the rest of the region, creating a crisis that could last for years. The scale of the proposed destruction is almost unprecedented in modern warfare.
The history of these threats goes back to late March, when Trump first posted about hitting power plants on social media. Since then, he has extended the deadline twice, but his rhetoric has only become more explicit. He has used phrases like bringing them back to the Stone Age, which suggests a level of destruction that goes far beyond tactical military goals. Iran has responded by threatening to target U.S. energy infrastructure in the region, creating a dangerous cycle of escalation. While gas prices have already spiked globally due to the war, the actual destruction of the grid would have far more permanent and devastating consequences. Critics argue that the grid is not a military asset and that destroying it would be a catastrophic mistake with long-term moral and political costs. The focus on the biggest power plants first indicates a strategy designed for maximum civilian impact.
Finally, the Bannon case.
The U.S. Supreme Court has cleared the way for Steve Bannon's contempt of Congress conviction to be dismissed. This is a major win for one of Donald Trump's most prominent and loyal supporters. Bannon was originally convicted in 2230 for refusing to comply with subpoenas related to the January 6th Capitol riot. He has already served his 4-month prison sentence, so this dismissal is largely symbolic, but it carries significant political weight. The Trump administration actually asked the Supreme Court to dismiss the case in the interest of justice, a move that the court has now facilitated by sending the case back to a lower court. This reversal negates a previous appeals court ruling that had upheld the jury's verdict. It marks a significant shift in how the current administration is handling legal challenges faced by its closest political allies.
Bannon has been a central figure in Trump's political orbit for a decade, serving as a key architect of the 2016 victory and a White House advisor. Even after leaving the administration, he has remained a powerful voice through his War Room podcast, where he has even advocated for Trump to serve a third term. The Biden administration was responsible for the original prosecution, and the Supreme Court had previously declined to step in when Bannon was headed to jail. However, with the change in administration, the U.S. Solicitor General filed a response stating that dismissing the criminal case is in the interest of justice. This development is seen by many as a sign of the administration's intent to clear the records of those it believes were unfairly targeted by the previous government. The lower court is now expected to finalize the dismissal shortly.
That wraps up our briefing for today. Thank you for joining us for this roundup of the day's most critical stories. We will see you back here tomorrow.